Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I am Brian Linder. I'm here with Dan Sostek, Eric Epler, and Rymir Vaughn this week. Dan, let them hear your voice real quick, my man.
Howdy.
I'm thrilled that Rymir is joining us this week.
Yeah, and the Rymir Vaughn. Rymir, let them hear your voice.
I'm glad to be here.
Now you know what these people sound like as we move forward in the podcast. If you're a long time listener, you already knew what they sounded like. Interesting week. Obviously, we're now into March, guys, getting ready to get into spring. Some of these guys have been out, running around playing in the 7-on-7s. I think Gavin Sidwar's playing for Torrey Smith's team. We had Torrey Smith on here last year, former Raven star. Saw Gavin throwing some nice passes out there. I think they got a pretty good team there. I think Ben Dupree played Citadel. I think he's got a team coming out of Central PA that was rolling around this weekend playing some games and looking good. So, when we get into this 7-on-7 spring season, guys, you know what that means. It won't be long. I know the mega practice date is out. I think that's May 15th, maybe, over in York. They do every year, which is a pretty neat deal. And then I think that's the same day as the Spring Fling 7-on-7 over at Hannah. So spring is in the air, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it'll be that first Friday night of the fall. So we do have some interesting stuff. We got Rymir on here to talk a little bit of what he's been doing at PennLive, but we do have some interesting stuff going around. First of all, Messiah Mickens, guys, seemed like, a month or two ago, he said he locked down this Penn State deal. Now he's back taking visits. Juwan Sider leaves, goes to Notre Dame. Got an official visit set for air. I know he's going to go see Dan's boy, Bill Belichick, it looks like, in North Carolina. What do we think about Messiah? We hearing anything? What do you think about this and him taking these visits?
I'm not super surprised, just because there's been a lot of movement on that front that would change kind of his commitment, right? At least obviously the biggest one being Sider. I think everyone has said is one of the big reasons a lot of these running backs come to Penn State is they like playing for Sider, and he heads to Notre Dame. Also, I don't think it will affect him too much, but both those running backs come back this year. That could set back, timelines for freshman running backs this year who thought they were going to get on the field. They might now redshirt, things like that. And then also he's been paired with a lot of kids kind of a year above him, a year below him and stuff. He's sandwiched between Tyke Hayes and Kamon Spell. There's plenty of reason for him to at least evaluate his other options. I saw Tyler Merrill, Notre Dame commit, tweet at him with a shamrock emoji. So there's obviously some flavor there, and I'm sure he's grown up. Anybody who walks around these parts on a Saturday in the fall knows there's plenty of Notre Dame support in this area. But yeah, I just think that when a kid commits as early as Messiah did at this point in college football, it's obviously great to lock down that spot, but I don't think anyone should be under the illusion that it's a final decision. And all credit to Messiah. You got to do what you got to do, right? These schools aren't going to be loyal to you, so you got to find what's right for yourself.
Ep and Rymir, the big rumor is that Notre Dame is, really attractive to him. I don't think that should shock anybody, considering that's where the running back coach who recruited him is, right?
Yeah, no, and I think too. I think sometimes we look a little bit too far into these things. I'm not saying this is a case with Messiah, but why wouldn't you take your 5 officials, even if you're committed? Why wouldn't you do it? You know what I mean? You're a 17 or 18-year-old kid. You're going to get flown to campus. You're going to get shown everything you want to see. You're going to get some swag. Yeah, there's going to be banter about it, but your commitment could be stronger than ever. We don't know. I just think at times some of this, action after your commitment, is a little bit overblown on where this kid, maybe he decommits, maybe goes somewhere else. And again, Messiah may be thinking about Notre Dame hard.
I mean, I agree usually, but I think when it immediately is following the coach leaving one school for that other school, I think this is a little different situation where I think it means a whole lot.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying that is at your discretion. If you want to continue this, I mean, there's guys that we know of and we've covered through the years that have said, listen, I've committed here, I'm 100%. And then it just drops off completely. No social media, no posting things about that, anything regarding something different. And they're just 100% all in. And I'm not saying Messiah isn't, is one of these guys that maybe is looking elsewhere. But, I just think at times we tend to blow up every single thing that either a top recruit sends out on social media, or maybe he likes it because he's a buddy of a guy who's committed to Notre Dame, in these situations. So I know there is a push there by Notre Dame. And it doesn't seem like it seems like Messiah is wavering a little bit, but again, I think some of this is just a little bit, a little bit out there in the wind now than more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Usually, just this situation, it's a little too when I think that there's also been some tweets. Messiah's, not happy with some of his rankings and things like that. And then just in 2025, recruitment at the college football level is so tied to these specific recruiters now. It's way like these head coaches just kind of come in and finish the job and kind of say, hey, what's up? Jawan Sider's probably the one that was selling Messiah most of the bill of goods for what he was going to do at Penn State. And so for him to switch, I'm totally sympathetic to it too, because it's I imagine Messiah knows Jawan Sider a lot better than he knows James Franklin.
Yeah, I agree. And but who knows? There may be someone else is offering more. Maybe there's somebody who wants to put him at defense.
I mean, you know me, I'd tell him just go play for Bill Belichick, because we could have tie into Bill Belichick.
On the defensive side, though, I'll say he doesn't really fit a prototype with size.
No.
So he's going to be a college football running back.
But I mean, maybe in the scheme, Brian, at North Carolina, he fits up okay defensively, and that might be something that they want him for, and maybe he's open to that. I mean, there's so many variables.
I think he's 5'11", 200, right? I mean, he's got a weird kind of body for defense. Now he's like a bowling ball running. Dan, I think, brought up something very interesting where he has talked about his rankings a little bit. I was the first guy to ever write about Messiah. I wrote about him coming out of the 8th grade. I talked to Jordan Hill. He thought he could be one of the best to ever come out of this area. I think Messiah is one of the more fascinating prospects in the state, if not the country, coming into this year. He's a 4-star running back on just about every recruiting site. I think a lot of that, if you go back to his sophomore year at Trinity, really, the first 4 games, he was explosive. He looked the part, and it wasn't. People say, "Oh, well, Trinity was playing 2A or whatever." No, he was explosive. I mean, he was
scheduled to start that season.
Yeah, he was explosive, and then he hurt his ankle, and I don't think he was ever 100% the rest of that season. Then he come into his junior year, and I felt like, they had Nehemiah Ewell, they had Deontay Sheffy there, who was a Syracuse commit. Nehemiah Ewell was a really good player for them, and maybe one of their best, maybe their best running back through the first half of the season last year. I felt like through the first 5, 6, 7 games, Messiah wasn't the Messiah we saw the first 4 games of his sophomore year. And then he kind of you started seeing a little bit more of it down the stretch, right, for them. And now I know he's been working out with Lance Dean, who's been working out Katron Allen, I believe, the running back up at Penn State. He's been working out Abdul Carter and different guys like that. Micah Parsons, obviously. I know he's been really working out with Lance a lot in this offseason. I feel like this is a big year for Messiah because I felt like we saw a little bit of the old Messiah again down the stretch last year. And this is really fascinating to me to see. I think he could have a big year for Harrisburg with the work he's been putting in.
You also have to remember he didn't have didn't have that big old Kevin Brown to run behind for most of the last season too. So the offensive line was kind of in flux too, and we saw it towards the end. He really started to look.
But I don't think he was the same running back the first 4 or 5 games last year as he was the first 4 or 5 games of his sophomore year.
Cal Everett said, he was learning. He was adjusting a little bit.
I will say this too. He didn't have the burden of playing both ways and on the line, and that physicality up front. That sort of takes, that zaps you of your energy. And I mean, he can't, his first 4 or 5 games at Trinity, he was just a running back.
He played as like a blitz. He had specific packages as a blitzer, but he was the same amount.
He's going to get to college and be able to focus on being just a running back, and that to me is huge. I mean, that keeps you a little bit more fresh. I mean, you're paying 75 snaps in a high school game. Your energy gets zapped, and so maybe he doesn't look as combustible in the fourth quarter, but he sure did. When push came to shove for Harrisburg in the playoffs, and he was a man child on both sides of the line.
Yeah.
So I mean, just for him to focus on one in college, being a running back in college, man, I mean, that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I think he was a different running back the last 5 games of their season as compared to the first half of their season.
Well, he definitely was bigger.
Yeah.
He definitely packed on some muscle. I mean, because
he's been working.
As a freshman, you saw him, and he was kind of wiry.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom. So
the stuff he's doing with Lance is a lot of the same stuff they do with Micah. Lance is big on the quick start, stop, getting in, getting out of cuts and stuff like that. And you pack that on Messiah's frame. I really think he could be, like, everything I said about him is not a knock. I think if you go back and look at the stats and stuff, it's like it just is what happened. But he was great down the stretch, and I think he's poised to have a big year. I think he's going to be a really fascinating player to watch this year, because I think he had a good year last year. He won Gatorade Player of the Year. You find, so like when I say he had a down first half of the year, is really kind of speaks to what he was, right? That he won Gatorade Player of the Year, but I think he could have an even better year this year coming up.
And the underrated thing about him too that he's always been able to do is he's always been a good catcher of the football out of the backfield, which is obviously a pretty big deal for the next level. Especially, you watch Drew Allard play in that semifinal game. He can't really complete passes to wide receivers. He's consistently gone better at that part of his game too, which is going to be big for whatever school, whether it's Penn State, Notre Dame, UNC. University of Pittsburgh could always use some running backs too.
Yeah, you see the Pitt fan coming out. I will say this, speaking of Harrisburg guys, Sean Lee has apparently been doing really, really well for Pitt.
I imagine that he's going to have a bigger, obviously Pitt had a pretty unspeakable tragedy where their top recruit died in a car accident.
Yeah.
I'm also a cornerback, but Pat Narduzzi, he gets a lot of flack. The one thing that guy knows is he finds cornerbacks that fit his system and puts them on an island, and he's trusting Shawnee from what I heard. And he's also said Justin Cook's taking some snaps at running back.
Yeah.
So,
Pitt will be a school for Harrisburg fans to watch this year.
Yeah.
It feels like it's off in Penn State.
Well, I mean, you throw in those two guys, you have Jules Goff, you have Kenny Johnson. Jules Goff's going to have a pretty sizable role. I think he's going to be their full-on number 2. So a lot of District 3 on Pitt this year.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
Well, we brought Rymir on here, guys, and we got some other stuff to talk to, but we'll circle back to that real quick because Rymir Vaughn's been doing a lot of, and we're going to get back into it this year with recruiting. He's already been kind of following a lot of the guys around the state. He does a stock riser piece every Monday on PennLive.
Friday.
Is it, Rymir? Every Friday? Couldn't be more off on the days there, coulda. But he does like a stock riser where he just kind of guys who are getting offers around the state and stuff like that, which he's noticing who are getting a little love from recruiters and stuff like that. Rymir, kind of tell us some of the guys right now that have been kind of jumping off the page as far as guys who get some love from recruiters and guys maybe we should be looking out for.
I know, obviously, in my last article or story that came out, my last Stock Risers piece, I put the two Coatesville guys on there. Terry Wiggins, linebacker, went from a 3-star to a 4-star, and he got visits set up with other, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. You just want to have to check it out, check the story out. Mm-hmm. But him and their tackle, Maxwell Hiller. Yeah, Maxwell Hiller. He 5-star. He's gotten looks from a ton of big schools. He recently got an offer from Bama and Sacramento State, I believe. And those two, I think, were the two guys that I highlighted. And of course, I do a mid-pen roundup every time, to take care of our audience.
I just covered Coatesville, Cumberland Valley boys hoops. Max Hiller comes off the bench as a center for them. They play against Cumberland Valley. I was talking with Cumberland Valley head coach David Vespignani before the game. I was like, you guys should have brought Tyler Merrill, rostered him for this game just to, get some reps in for both. I think both coaches would have agreed to that, right? But Max Hiller's brother, actually, Colton Hiller, is a freshman on the basketball team and I believe he's got a basketball offer from Penn State. So you don't really see that too often with brothers a year apart playing basketball and football. But yeah, Hiller's he's a big kid. He's going to be a good one.
He's massive. But I did some mid-pen guys, Samuel Moba and Marcus Yeager from Trinity. They've gotten a lot of love. They've gotten a lot of love from the same schools too. Monmouth, I believe, UMass, just to name a few of the schools that they've gotten some love from. Torrin Evans, Susquehanna Township quarterback, recently got an offer from Akron, I believe. It's his first one so far.
Marcus Yeager, I was also informed, is I didn't know this, but I believe he is Elias Koch's stepbrother.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so he's also playing hoops. He played hoops for Trinity basketball this year.
Carolyn Fortney, you got to let me know how, Elias' stepbrothers at Trinity and Elias is at Harris.
Because he's a hooper. He's playing late into the year.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but that's a whole other story. Like, what happened to Harrisburg hoops, right?
I think, that might be a little off air, but yeah, I imagine if you had Marcus Yeager on that, he's a really good, defensive. He plays kind of all over defense, but I think he'll be playing football at the next level for sure. Those two guys on Trinity are really, is Mulba related to Fatorma?
Yeah, so I was talking to Sam Mulba, and we actually may have him and Fatorma on the podcast at some point. Fatorma Mulba, for people who don't know, is one of the more fascinating stories that I had ever done. He was born in, I want to say, Ghana, maybe. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look at the story I did. But he came over, from there and really never played football until he got to Susquehanna Township a couple years ago. Big kid, ended up signing with Penn State, big raw kid, obviously, because he didn't have a lot of football experience. Went to West Virginia, transferred out of Penn State to West Virginia, had a pretty good senior year. And I was just talking to Samuel Mobile, who is his little brother. Fatorma is working out, getting ready for his pro day. And I think he'll probably at least maybe get into a camp with the senior year he had. And while I say that, before we move on with some of these recruits, I'll give a shout out to Dante Kent too, the Harrisburg High kid. He had a really, really good career at Central Michigan at corner, and is a really good kick returner too. He had a pretty good pro day from what I understand. Reportedly ran a 4.38. I think he's going to get a chance in NFL here too. But yeah, Samuel Mulba is Fatorma's younger brother. Really good story with those kids and what they're doing there. So, and Marcus Yeager is interesting to me too. He's anytime you get those basketball kids, but he's got a long, wingspan, some size to him. He's a good athlete. I could see where the love is there. So I tell you what, too, Max Hiller. Yep, I don't think we got him on the All-State teams, did we?
Hiller was not All-State. He was on the ballot for the PA Football Writers. I believe Hiller did make All-State from the coaches team. Coach All-State. Yeah, he was right. He was right there, obviously in the mix. But when it's 6A lineman, it's a difficult beast.
Well, I was going to say,
Really
Matt Ortega actually reached out to me, and he was a little upset about it. And I don't have a problem with coaches making a case for their guys, especially when
Sure.
it's a guy that it's not like he wasn't undeserving, because he's probably the top offensive line recruit in the state right now, right? I mean, well, Kevin Brown, I would say, is probably bigger than him, but
He's close. I mean, I think Hiller. I saw a tweet from Hiller saying I think his March includes, was he going to South Carolina, like Bama, Georgia, like in consecutive weeks, starting this weekend or something like that. I think the tweet was like March 12th, so maybe he's already,
I think he tweeted that like 20 minutes after the state playoff basketball game too. So he literally.
I mean, that's
as Maryland Brown committed, he's easily the most sought after lineman right now.
Yeah, he is. Yes.
So,
for sure.
maybe if Maryland Brown are not committed, then, maybe they're in the mix. But I mean, you could say right now he's the most sought after lineman. So good stuff there. Terry Wiggins, I haven't watched a lot of his film or anything, but he's a name too that seems to be gaining a lot of steam. So Coach Field's got some guys, seems like every couple of years, Matt Ortega, who's the big 33 coach, he gets a few guys out there in Coachville, man.
My mom actually worked with the mother of a couple kids who played at Rutgers and Old Dominion, the young siblings, Aaron and Avery Young. So familiar with Coatesville.
They were really good. Both of those kids were really good at Coatesville. So I'll say too, just on the recruiting tip, Rymir, I feel like the quarterback situation in the state, we've talked about this before. I was watching some Peyton Falzone that's been posting a lot of his videos, him throwing with his quarterback coach, the kid over at Nazareth. Man, he's looking good, guys. Like I said, I've watched Gavin Sidwar. I think he's looking really good. And then, again, I think the underrated guy is Samaj Bills, because he's not quite as big as those guys, but he can play. He's been getting a lot of, his sophomore, freshman year, he's getting like Alabama and stuff. Now you see him getting a lot more of the kind of like mid-major stuff, or high FCS stuff. I think it's just because I don't think he's gotten to like 6'5" like Gavin or Peyton, but he's a good ball player too. So I'm excited to see what these quarterbacks do over there next year.
We've said it on the pod before, but he's a guy that would not shock me if he starts out at somewhere like James Madison or Old Dominion or something and ends up being one of the most sought after transfer quarterbacks. He's just a guy that is going to play well when he gets his chance. So he's way too savvy of a player. Like, the thing about him is he's just such like a good decision maker, like at the high school level. I just can't imagine that guy not getting into a system, growing into that system, and eventually having like a big year. And that's basically what college football is now, right? Like you can go to a school like, Toledo or something, be really good for a year, and then all of a sudden Alabama's going to come on you.
Well, Rymir, you got anybody else you want to talk about real quick? Or
yeah, I can give you a couple of names, especially on the quarterback front. One guy that I didn't expect to be as good as he was Tegan Carroll from Halifax. Now, Halifax I don't think they won a game last year, but watching him, he has a nice deep ball. I will say that he's confident, he's fearless, he will throw the ball, and maybe that's part of the reason why they weren't as good as they were. But he's a tough runner. I like him as a dual threat. Maybe he's not going to get the huge D1 Bama like offers like that, but maybe like a PSAC school or Division III, Division II caliber quarterbacks. Another quarterback that I really liked was Milton Hershey's Logan Jerry. I don't think he plays quarterback at the next level. No. But he's such an exciting runner that it made me sit down and continue to watch anytime he took off or things along those lines.
We talked
pretty good.
Yeah, I think Teague could be in that boat too, where he could be an athlete who could end up at another position as well.
He's a really good wrestler too. He came in second in districts in wrestling for Halifax. I believe he's tied with a lot of the Steel High kids too. Yeah, really good athlete. We talked about Logan Jerry last week for our potential, breakout candidates. He's got plenty of his cousins, Julius Chestnut, who played in the NFL for the Titans this year. We said I think he's pretty tight with Samaj Beals too. He just kind of showed up at Milton Hershey, kind of moved up from the JV team and basically almost willed them into the playoffs last year. He was electric to watch.
Yeah, it was a similar path that Keontae Lucas took. You put him in at quarterback, because he's the most dynamic kid on your team. And you need that sort of flow and you need that sort of pace. And that's what Jerry gave him. I mean, Jerry didn't really become a starter till week 6 or 7, Dan, somewhere along those lines. And I think I don't know. I think the one game he had 5 or 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, he ran for 1,000 yards in like 6 games.
In about 5 weeks. Yeah, 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, Carroll's also a good shout too, because those guys, we do kind of overlook them sometimes because of the team record.
Everything Rymir said about Tegan Carroll is correct. I mean, he's a gamer. I got to see him early in the season last year. And again, Halifax was just, they're 5-6 guys short.
Yeah.
Just, that not a huge amount of numbers on the sidelines.
You need a quarterback like Carroll on their team.
Yeah. And Carroll fits in that, old Tri-Valley League mold. And there's 2 or 3 of those guys, maybe 4 in the league right now that are guiding football teams, those small school teams. And Carroll fits right in there as just a gamer. We talked about, Matt Sig a lot, from Fort Cherry. Obviously they're different players. Don't get me wrong. Maybe, different level players, but very similar in style and how they go about their business. And Carroll's fun to watch. He really is.
He's a pretty good linebacker too. Like he obviously those guys got to play both sides. So
right.
he's a smart player as well.
Yeah. It wouldn't shock me to see him end up somewhere as a safety or somewhere like that too.
And how many quarterbacks do you see that are wrestlers? You don't usually the wrestlers. You get some running backs. You get a lot of linemen and linebackers. You don't usually see the quarterbacks wrestling and being as good as they are. I know. So that anytime you make the state tournament in PA, that means you're pretty good at it too. So I think he can take a hit. That's for sure.
Rymir, every Friday, stock risers on PennLive.com. We are going to, and I'm severely behind in this journey. At some point, be rolling out some new recruiting stuff across PennLive.com. So keep your eyes open for that. Keep your eyes open for Rymir's stuff. Guys, as I'll say before we go off the air, another thing that Dan and I were talking about before we got on here is it seems like it's the year of and I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong here or whatever, but it seems like the year of fumbling coaching situations. And in the Mid-Penn particularly, the Joe Heaton situation at Susquehanna Township, obviously he's back there. Should have been, could have been handled better. That's, however that happened, whatever side you fell on that argument, definitely could have been handled better for everything they went through. And now it seems like Gettysburg is a mess with Matt Heiser. What do we know about that situation, Eric? Were they not advertising his job and also expecting him to still run weight room and stuff like that? Which seems a little crazy.
Look, a lot of this stems from these school districts on how they treat coaching jobs as 1-year contracts. That's what a lot of this, nobody likes this situation it is. And I understand that, and the basically the backstory is, well, we want to make sure we have a good quality list of candidates and that may be somebody who fits better with the program. So, individuals like Joe Heaton who put their heart and soul into coaching, that saga reported on a couple months ago. And now Matt Heiser's getting caught up in this situation at Gettysburg. I mean, I've seen it play out 100 times. So have you guys. Typically what happens at the end of the season is an evaluation meeting, basically with the athletic director at minimum. And that evaluation gets passed on to administrators as needed. The fact that Heiser was continuing to run weights, continuing to meet with teams and stuff like that, means he had to be given at minimum a satisfactory grade and say, listen, boom, everything's good. You're good to go. And we move on. And then enter this cooperative agreement now with Fairfield that has sort of become really sort of the linchpin of this situation and sort of an effort to now reevaluate the head coaching position and open Heiser's position. So they're going back and forth now. The last couple of meetings, you can watch the meetings actually online. They stream their board meetings, and it's just been a steady flow of parents and players. At the last 2 meetings ago, in February 18th, a lot of the players stood up to back and support Coach Heiser. This last meeting, which just happened Tuesday night, was a lot of parents and assistant coaches that stepped up in support of retaining Matt Heiser. Like I said, we've seen this situation where there's this belief that someone else can do it better. And I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but, he's been there 13 years. They've had 9 winning seasons under him. Yes, they fell short of the playoffs last year. I think they were 4-6 overall. But he's a longtime special education teacher in the building. He's now dean of students in the building. And it's just a guy who obviously loves football, loves the game. I say this all the time. When you have sort of outside influence trying to break in and create these issues and open these positions, none of these guys, and we know what these guys are paid to coach football and the hours that it takes with weights and throw arounds and conditioning drills and doing all that. No one's getting rich coaching football in central Pennsylvania. No one. I don't care if you're there for 1 year or 30 years. No one's getting rich off of this. They do it for the love of it, the love of the game, and the love to see these kids move forward. Yes, wins and losses are important. Granted, gotcha. But there's a lot more to high school sports. We talk about it all the time. And it just seems like another unfair sort of attack on a coach who really means something to the community.
I think the optics are a little weird, too, that they kind of waited. From afar, it's like his son obviously was kind of the star quarterback for the team, and this was his final year. It almost feels like, they waited for Brady to graduate, and then they're like, all right, now we don't have anything kind of tying you here, and like we don't have an awkward situation with your son, and like there's just all these weird components of this timing of this with the Fairfield stuff too. I can't imagine this ends up like, I don't know. It seems like these schools kind of just do this without thinking.
It's a timing issue too, Dan. And it's if you give a guy a passing grade and say, listen, we're moving forward, coach, you're good to go. That happens in November. That's when it happens. And then all of a sudden now, come early February, something changes. Well, nothing that Heiser did except run the off-season weights and start building for 2025 season. So what's the difference now? Why does this change just because we have this agreement now that we're going to accept Fairfield kids into the program? I mean, that's a good thing. That should be a positive thing.
Yeah.
Fairfield doesn't have the numbers. They decided in December, we don't have the numbers. So we're going to do this co-op with Gettysburg. And now all of a sudden it seems like an opportunity for them to open and start anew. There's a way you treat people. We talk about it all the time. The way they treated Joe Heeden was wrong. They knew it. Everyone knew it, and this feels very similar.
Well, my take on it is just simply this. Again, I sort of said this when we talked about Joe Heeden. You could sit down and I can make an argument for you why Joe Heeden probably shouldn't be the coach of Susquehanna Township. I can also make a good argument for you why he should be, like I said. And I think ultimately the deciding factor for me is when the community come in and said, yeah, maybe you felt like we should have won more games, but that's not as big a deal to us. Okay. That's it for me. That means you should be the coach there. Do I feel some of Joe's teams probably should have done a little better? Yeah. And so that's why I could see the other. And the same with Gettysburg. I could probably sit down and make an argument to you why Matt Heiser shouldn't be the football coach there. And I can make a good argument to you why he should be the football coach there. All right. So I don't think it's necessarily unfair to review these guys' performances, but I do think that there's something being highlighted here, no matter what side of the argument you fall on with these positions. And we're seeing it time and time again. And it's this. There is a real lack of leadership and ineptness. It's an epidemic with some athletic directors. And I'm not saying like the Gettysburg athletic director is guilty in this situation or whatever, but there's a real lack of leadership and there's an epidemic of just not being able to handle these situations correctly. I think it's a level of professionalism and a way to communicate with your own people that is just lacking and it's poor. Like the Joe Heeden situation probably could have been handled a lot, but no, probably it could have been handled a lot better. This could have been handled a lot better. I mean, from what I understand, they're advertising the guy's job, but they also expect him to go run the weight room.
Right.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't think there's anybody listening to the podcast who wants to go be a lame duck somewhere, right? They're advertising for your job. You want to answer. So You can make an argument that maybe Gettysburg should make a football change. You could also make a great argument that they should keep Matt Heiser. But those are arguments that thing should be worked out and not play out in public. Like all of these situations are now playing out in public.
No, when it
And
should
it's just
it should be worked out when they decide they're going to accept Fairfield into a co-op, and it should be, hey, is Matt Heiser going to be in charge of this co-op? Which when was that news announced? That like months ago?
Fairfield made the decision in December.
Yeah.
So essentially, sometime in mid-January, it started. Okay, well now let's get it ready. Well, suddenly, by early February, his job was open.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. And listen, all these coaches know, hey, listen, if these administrations have the right to open the positions, it's district policy. I get that. But there's just a way to prepare and go about handling that. If you're going to let a coach go or open his position, that should be known in November when they're done with their season. I mean, these meetings happen a week after the season's done. Your season's over. And you get evaluated from the athletic director, maybe the superintendent, or the AD presents the meeting, how the meeting went to those who need to know. And then you move forward from there. But nothing's in the dark. Now, all of a sudden, after 3 months of hey, we're good to go, coach. Now, all of a sudden, this new wrinkle comes in. We open the position, and no one pulled. I don't know for sure if Coach Heiser got pulled aside and say this is coming, or he was blindsided by it. I don't know. I'm not going to make that assessment there. I don't know what happened, how it happened. All I know is when you're given a passing grade in November, and if he's continuing to do off-season workouts and get ready. He had to be. There's just a way to do it. And the timing stinks because now, I mean, Brian, you mentioned 7-on-7s working already. You mentioned, now none of these guys, Gettysburg or Fairfield, are working out and getting ready and getting staged for 7-on-7s. Hell, Heiser in Gettysburg was at Joe's Spring Fling, which is not far down the road. Now they're not getting ready for that. Gettysburg would host their own 7-on-7.
If you're a good player at Gettysburg, you're looking to get out, by the way.
Right. It creates just this wave of unknown. I just think it all could be avoided by just being prepared and setting things up, and this fell short.
Well, like on the Hannah situation, on the Monday before Thanksgiving, I spoke to their athletic director who told me that Joe Heaton was their coach and nothing was up. And on the day before Thanksgiving, when everybody was out, they posted the job. So again, I think there's a leadership issue in a lot of these boards and athletic directors and things of that nature, where you just got to be clear on communication, get out in front of things. Nobody wants to get out in front of anything anymore and talk. You know why? Because it takes having a little bit of a little bit of character and just talking to people and saying, look, I love you to death, but we feel like we might need to make a change here, and we're going to do it. So it's like everything's just like drug out and played out, and it ends up playing out public, and it ends up being uglier than it ever should have been.
Yes.
Like you can move on from a coach without it being a whole disaster in the public eye, and have a better, I will say before we hop off of here, I believe our guy, Bill Miller, who I thought did about as good a job as you could do at Northern the last couple of years. I think he's now, from what I saw, I need to text Bill, where West York is an assistant, I believe.
Yeah. Because they were in the district semis, I believe.
Yeah. And look, did Bill's guys go win state championships and things like that? No. But again, for the athletes he had at Northern, I felt like they did about as good as they could have. I think he's a very solid football coach and a good guy. He's always been fair to me and been helpful to me in certain situations. So I think the world of Bill. Glad he got on at West York. Dan said I think they had one of their better years last year. They came up a little bit. They've added a good football coach to their staff, so good to see that. What else we got, guys? We got anything else this week? We've gone 30 minutes. Josh Oswalt texted me and asked me what happened if we ever went under 30. Did we get fined or something? And I said, no, we don't get fined. It's just we're supposed to go about 30.
Just a quick shout out. There's only one. Winter sports is technically still going on. We got one team left, and it's the Hershey Trojans, led by their quarterback Cam Sweeney, who's Quick, like I've heard, that he's getting some Ivy League football interest. He had a really good year as kind of a dual threat quarterback last year for them, run for over 1,000 yards. He might play bad. Like, he's having such a big postseason with a lot of opposing coaches speaking really highly of that kid. Has led them as far as Hershey's ever gotten basketballs.
He's one of the more underrated, well-rounded athletes in the Mid-Penn for the last 2 years, really. He's been good at basketball and football. And his brother, Marcus, was a really good athlete, too. I think he's somewhere in the PSAC, really good player for them. So,
yep,
good stuff there. Dan, I will mention Trey Whelan, the kid from Trinity, right?
Yeah.
If you guys don't know, the NCAA tournament start. This isn't football, but it is kind of football. Dan's got a list out of all your PA connections in the NCAA tournament. If anybody has any good locks, I know somebody who might want to put some gambling stuff down. So, Dan, good locks for this tournament, let me know. Dan's got a piece out with all your PA connections in there. One of them was Trey Whelan, who actually left Trinity for St. Francis to play football, like a 6'4", wide receiver, linebacker, safety type. He's transitioned over to basketball where he played at Trinity. Now, he didn't play a lot for St. Francis this year, but they did just kind of lose incredibly in an incredible way here in this playing game against.
That was an incredible game. And
Alabama State, right?
Yep. And St. Francis's head coach is State College High School alum. So
yeah, and there's a good many PA connections, so you'll want to check that out. I'll have the tournament going on all the TVs in here in the man cave.
No, who should have played football is why can't I think of his name on Marquette? The kid from Wilson.
Stevie Mitchell?
Yeah. Stevie Mitchell should have played football because that kid plays basketball like a football player.
Well, he was a heck of a guard, man, in high school. I tell you, Josh Power, you remember him that played at Milton Hershey?
Yeah.
He was like a tight end defensive end, and I thought he could have played college football. He went to Franklin and Marshall, I believe, right? And had a really nice career up. He just wrapped that up and had a really, really nice career. I think he was a 1,000-point scorer for him and stuff. Milton Hershey kid.
Yeah,
obviously.
Parra could have been a good tight end in college.
Yes, he could have. I actually had him. I actually thought he was a better football player, way better football player than basketball player. But he ended up having a nice college career.
Well, that's what we told Jamie. We were talking about this with Jamie Thomas on our podcast. All the football players want to be basketball players, and all the basketball players want to be football players. So it's and CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud gave that quote, and he said everybody wants to be a baseball player because they make the most money. So,
if you guys see Dan in the office or up close, stay away from him. He's been spending the day getting coughed on in a drugstore.
Trader Joe's. I'm about done.
Trader Joe's.
Done with people. That was one of the worst things that's
He's been tweeting about some guy hacking on him.
It's a terrible store.
And he just took it too. He didn't even say anything.
It ran to the bathroom. It literally got the vapors on my arm. I was like, this is disgusting. And it was a loud cough. It was a loud cough, and he just walked away.
Ep brought up Keontae Lucas earlier, and I've been really praising Dan on this mustache game. But when I first got here, Dan, Keontae Lucas, first of all, he was 100% a running back playing quarterback. Like he ended up playing running back like at Central Connecticut State, but he didn't really have a whole lot on it when he threw it, but he could run the football. But when he took the helmet off, Dan, his mustache was about 3 times as thick as yours when he was like 17 years old.
Yeah, that is kind of humbling.
He had a grown man mustache.
That's kind of humbling.
I mean, he did. I don't know if you remember that, Epler. No beard or anything, no sideburns, just a straight grown man mustache. Oh, Keontae Lucas.
He was fun to watch. Wow.
He was a good ball player. It was a Jeff Boger and those guys. That was 100% a high school offense where they had a running back and they snapped it to him when I got here, and then he would almost like backyard football. He would do whatever he could. It usually turned out good for him. So I think he hurt his knee a couple times, and he ended up at Central Connecticut State playing running back. Good player though. But anyway, look, we've had a walk down memory lane. We've done all this. We've told you guys to avoid Dan, who may now have the plague, the bird flu, or something like that. We got the NCAA tournament coming. Guys, we got a podcast. Rymir on Fridays for your stock rises. And we'll have more stuff coming on prospects there. Rymir, tell them how to find you on social media.
Rymir Vaughn on Twitter. I'm not calling the X.
Yep. Tell them how to find you on Twitter.
I am at 3Jacker on X.
Dan.
Dan_Sostek.
I'm at Sports by B Linder on Twitter, and our producer Megan is at Savvy Literate. Megan, what do you got going on?
Not much. Tell Oswald we have had episodes under 30 minutes.
Well, as long as I'm here, I'm from the South, and we like to talk where I'm from. So we'll just keep the tape rolling when I'm around.
I think it's a good time to end the episode.
PennLive.com. Check us out there. Till next week, we'll see you then.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.